Welcome back. Well, the nonprofit 1792 Exchange launching a new China risk database, which offers a snapshot of funds invested by Fortune 100 companies in communist China. Many of the nation's top corporations do not disclose their full Chinese exposure. The database also shows the potential financial impact of these companies if the U.S. imposes sanctions on China, with projected annual losses totaling $157 billion. Joining me right now is former Kentucky Attorney General and 1792 Exchange CEO, Daniel Cameron. Great to see you, sir. Thanks very much for being here.
Maria, thank you for having me on to release this new China risk database.
Yeah, I mean, the 1792 Exchange is a nonprofit which develops policy and resources aimed at protecting businesses from woke companies, among others. But you could also put in there protecting them against the bad behavior of communist China. Daniel, tell us about what you've learned.
Well, look, this China risk database, essentially, as you said earlier, shares with the American people and investors the risk inherent to businesses, Fortune 100 businesses, doing business in China, having relationship with the communist China. I'm hopeful that this will hold these companies, these Fortune 100 companies, accountable. One of the challenges that we had with the risk database is we simply don't have a lot of information from the Fortune 100 companies because they fail to disclose the operations that they have in China. But we do know, as you noted, that there's $157 trillion that could be online in the event that the United States places sanctions on China. That's a scary figure. That's a scary number. But shareholders need to be aware of it.
What's the number?
$157 trillion.
Trillion dollars. We said billion earlier. You're talking about $157 trillion. How do you get there? Are you talking about their expectations of such a number? I mean, how do you get to $157 trillion?
Yeah, so this is based on estimates in economic models, plus what we've gleaned from annual shareholder reports and SEC filings. But again, as I noted earlier, the really important point to flag here is that roughly 55 of the F100 don't share any information. If you're a shareholder, you're pretty much in the dark about the relationship between China and the Fortune 100 companies. That is a scary place to be. And our leadership here, our CEOs and our C-suite folks, need to step up to the plate and make sure that more information is disclosed for purposes of shareholders and for purposes of the American worker and American consumer.
No, it's interesting. I've got a list here of all of the new, or relatively new at this point, national security laws that Communist China put into place ever since marching into Hong Kong and throwing freedom fighters like Jimmy Lai in jail. And these national security laws involve the ability of Communist China to march into any company it wants and basically take their data, raid the place, which we've actually seen raids happen before of foreign companies. Do these major banks and others who have their business in China, do they not recognize the national security risks that they're putting themselves and their companies and their shareholders in, not to mention the national security risk of America at large?
Well, Maria, I don't know if they do fully understand the national security implications of doing business with the Chinese Communist Party. If they did, they, in my judgment, wouldn't be so willing to participate and cooperate with a regime that we know practices human rights and civil rights violations daily. It's my judgment that they don't want to disclose this information simply because they know and understand that the more that shareholders and the American worker and the American consumer understand this, they'd have great concerns with it. And again, it's why I hope people will go to our website, 1792exchange.com, to look at this risk database, because I think it's terribly important for folks, particularly shareholders, to know what challenges may exist.
Absolutely. And then there's this whole DEI trend underway. We just mentioned all those banks leaving the Net Zero Alliance, but you've also got companies like Meta announcing the end of its diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, effective immediately. This happened on Friday, the same day that Mark Zuckerberg met with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Last week, Meta announced the end to its fact-checking program. I want to get your take on this, as well as these diversity programs. I spoke with Trump Media CEO Devin Nunes about this yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch.
If Zuckerberg is having a mea culpa moment, that's great. But let's remember, he spent $450 million of his own money to sway the 2020 election in favor of the left. So if he wants to do a mea culpa, I think he should spend $450. Maybe you add some interest on top of that. Maybe it's $550 million. And he ought to help companies that are out there like Fox News, Truth Social, now Twitter with X, Rumble, that have been fighting this censorship. Every single day we wake up and fight this censorship. He ought to take that money and join the fight and go after these woke corporations that are continuing to try to starve Fox and others of advertising.
Daniel, your reaction?
Well, look, as I've said recently, DEI is on death watch. And I think it's particularly important for the viewers to know at home that whether it's Meta, whether it's Walmart, whether it is McDonald's, whether it's Ford Motor Company, I mean, these are iconic brands that are making a decision to move away from diversity, equity, and inclusion and move towards merit, excellence, and integrity. And I think Mark Zuckerberg is waking up to the reality that we are in a new age, and the age of virtue signaling is over, and the age of sound business decisions and judgments is here. And I'm excited about what he's done. I do think that, you know, obviously he's got his past things that he has done that obviously a lot of people don't agree with. But ultimately, he's woken up to the view that we can't be moderating people's speech online. We've got to stand up for free expression, whether you're in government or in private, in the private sector.
Absolutely. Daniel, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, Daniel Cameron joining us.